Hey guys, welcome out to another video. Today we're going to be doing a mid-year reading wrap-up, and now as some of you may know, I am a busy college student and I have 2 jobs that I work as well, so hence why we're not doing a reading wrap-up every month. I can only read so many books, but we've still got a great lineup. I have my notes here in my trusty dusty notebook, and then I also keep track of just my thoughts and opinions in here, so you might see me reference that. And then I have a book of the year bracket, and we're also doing a book tracker here. And then I also track my reads with Goodreads and Fable because I am extra. But yeah, so we're gonna be going over the fiction books, and then we'll do nonfiction towards the end. I don't read as many nonfiction books as you'll notice, but I still have some good ones. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I was blessed to start out this year super strong with a 5-star read, which was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabatahir. Now this is I believe the 3rd book in the An Ember in the Ashes series. And if you don't know what that series is, literally, what are you doing? You need to go read it right now. It is hands down the best fantasy series I have ever read. And now listen, fantasy is not my favorite genre, so I'm not an expert. So if you don't like it, like, don't come for me. But I mean, I just feel like it is expertly crafted, character driven, but with like an intense, complex, buildable plot and an amazing world that you can really tell that the author has put a lot of effort into crafting. I don't even know how to explain this series to you if you don't know what it is. Lots of political intrigue. I believe it's inspired by both the Roman Empire and some Arab folklore as well. This 3rd book, I gave it 5 stars. I felt like it was devastating, it was violent, it was dark, it was gripping, but I also it was impeccably done. The plot was masterful, and I honestly feel like Sabatahir has a room in her house where she's got like the push pins, the red string, pictures and words everywhere. I mean, she just had to have been scheming away for months to come up with this installment of the series. So yeah, I was super pumped about that, and it was a winter break read when I was sick with the flu and then later with COVID, because both of those things had to happen to me within winter break. Like, that's just my life. Anyway, so the 2nd book that I read this year was The Stolen Kingdom by Bethany Atazadeh, I believe. She's an indie author, so she's self-published, and I gave this 3.5 stars. Now, The Stolen Kingdom, I believe, is a YA retelling of Aladdin, and I feel like towards the beginning, it was a little more loyal to that basic storyline, and then it started to stray a little bit. But then again, I've only read the 1st book in the series, so I don't know if she incorporates more elements from like the Disney-fied version of Aladdin that I've seen or not. Anyway, this was a really wholesome read, and I honestly really liked the way that the story was twisted. I felt like it was definitely inventive. And another thing that the story did well is that it touched on themes of prejudice in just a really genuine way. Like, it didn't feel forced, you know, like it made sense with the story and with the storyline. I will say the reason this got 3.5 stars for me is this is one of those books where even with high stakes at times, it's rather predictable and you can just feel that there's going to be a happy ending. It even ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, at least in my opinion, and I'm like, I can kind of see where this is going. Like, this is going to work out. It just had that feeling. And then my other critique would be, there are just random modern names, right? Like, this is supposed to be inspired by Aladdin, and so we have some like lovely, you know, traditional Arabic names, and I believe one of the main characters, his name is like Aiden or Caden, and then the main character is Ari, like Ariana Grande, like who? Like, I don't know. They're just both very popular names, like, in Western society in the United States in 2025. So that felt a little bit out of place for me, but still really well done. And I feel like I would have eaten this up so much more if I had been like 13. Still, I love a good indie author, love to support a good indie author. And so yeah, I'd recommend that you go check it out. Okay, deep breath, because my 3rd read for the year, it's gonna ruffle some feathers. It is, I already know. And I feel like I don't even need to introduce to you the plot, the setting, anything, because this book has truly taken the internet by storm over the past 2 years, and that is Fourth Wing. And I gave Fourth Wing a whopping 2 stars, okay? Because 2 stars for the plot, because there were some elements of the plot where, like, the idea of the dragons and the military school, it was there. Like, that's what had me hooked. That's the reason I was like, I need to read this. Like, everyone's saying like magical dragon school. I was thinking like this is gonna be like Hunger Games with dragons. No, baby. No. It was a cringe fest. There were so many things wrong with this book. I mean, mainly I would just say that I really feel like it was a romance disguised as a fantasy book. I mean, we see a lot of that these days, and I understand like a lot of people like to read that. And I want to make something very clear. It's okay to read purely for entertainment, like just because it's a laugh. Like, if I was like kind of hate reading this and I knew going in that this is the way that it was going to be, the dynamics were what they were, I might have enjoyed it more, right? But I think we need to acknowledge it for what it is. Like, we need to acknowledge that it's kind of like a trash read. I mean, it was not the masterpiece that everyone painted it to be. The romance aspect of it was definitely way too much of a focus, and it wasn't even good. Like, the writing was, I mean, I just got sick to my stomach with like the secondhand embarrassment. It was not there. And I understand like we tend to like things in fiction that we wouldn't look for in real life, but like this guy was like a total jerk. No, he was gross. He was a red flag. No. I'm not a fan, okay? And the power dynamics too, it almost gave like Divergent, like Dauntless in a way, but that was acceptable because like that's a classic, baby. I mean, let's be for real. What else? I mean, I don't really know what to say without spoiling it. Just was not the vibe. There were some decent side characters though. Like, there were some side characters where I was like, okay. So if Rebecca Yarros is listening, and she's not, okay, for the next few books that you write, like, I think you should kill off the main characters, Xaden and Violet, and we should just focus on the side characters, and that should be like the main story, and that would be great. Like, and no shade to the dragons. The dragons were great characters, I felt. This was also just like such a predictable book, and you're kind of being told that the stakes are so high. You're constantly being reminded that the stakes are so high, but there's not the sort of emotional depth that allows you to really care. Like, at least for me, a character would just up and die and they wouldn't say anything about it, and I was like, oh, okay.
Child, anyways, so.
Yeah, okay. And here's the thing. When I was reading this too, I felt like it just didn't feel authentic to me, in a sense of like, I did not feel like this was written from the heart. Like, let's take Hunger Games, which this was being compared to in some instances, which is blasphemy, let me just say. The Hunger Games, you can feel that book is written from the heart. Like, yes, there's a great plot, there's lots of violence, there's romance, it's written about young people, but you can tell that the author truly cared about this book and that there were valuable messages that were being conveyed within it, right? Whereas Fourth Wing just felt like it was written to be viral. Like, they just plugged it into ChatGPT and they were like, chat, like, how do I write something that the book talk girlies are gonna go crazy over? So imagine my not surprise when I found out that Rebecca Yarros, prior to writing this book, was kind of working with a publishing house, and yeah, they were just like, what is the viral book, the formula that we could come up with? I was dying of not surprise. I was like, oh, clock it. Yeah. Anyway, before I get too heated and offend too many people who I'm sure have already clicked off, that was my opinion on Fourth Wing. It was not a good February read, or maybe it was January, even worse. Like, it's snowy outside in Utah, and I was holed up reading this when I could have had like a nice Agatha Christie murder mystery. Anyway, I digress. Okay, book number 4 I truly did enjoy, and that was A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. It is a YA, I believe, dark academia, and I also think this is Ava Reed's first book that she got published. I don't know, could be wrong, so don't quote me on that, but yes, I gave it 4 stars. So I truly enjoyed the dark academia vibes in this book, and let me just explain a little bit of what is going on. It's a little bit vague, but here goes nothing. So we have this first-year university student, Effie, and this book is set in a different world, so I don't remember what all the different geographical locations are called or the name of the school or anything, but anyway, she is kind of living in like a little bit of a misogynistic society, and so she is the only architecture, like female architecture student at her university, and she's obsessed with this one author. I don't know, I believe he's a fantasy author. She's just obsessed with this guy. So when he passes away, she applies to be able to draw up a new house, like a new manor on his property to honor him, because his house is kind of caving in, and lo and behold, she wins. But who else accompanies her to this other part of the land, like when she leaves? It's a study abroad basically, but her snooty academic rival, who is from the neighboring enemy foreign nation, and they do not get along. That's all I'm gonna say for now, but I had a great time. I did think that the plot kind of dragged a little bit, and that tends to be the case with dark academia, so I didn't mind it too much. Another thing is that this book kind of addresses trauma and survivor's guilt, or like just the plight of being, you know, a victim or being painted as a victim. I think that it really touched upon that very well. One criticism that I do have is I feel like it kind of towed the line between YA and adult to an unnecessary extent. That's all I'll say. But it wasn't anything too crazy, but I just was like, if I was 14, I don't know if this would be the book for me. You know what I mean? But anyway, it was great. Totally would recommend A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. If you want a little cozy book to cuddle up to by the fire, maybe not the fire because it's summertime, but anyway, like some people, they like cozy reads year round. So if that's you, definitely check that out. The next book I actually have a physical copy of. So this is Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. Not as well known of an author as some of the other ones we've talked about. But anyway, Garden Spells was, you know, I really didn't know what to think about it. I ended up giving it a 3.5, but this book was so confusing in that it's like a cozy read, but it's like not suitable for children either, which I kind of wasn't expecting fully. It was simultaneously wholesome and traumatizing. Like, it's such a cozy little setting, but you need to look up trigger warnings, I'm telling you right now. And yeah, it was also a little too predictable for my liking, but I feel like I've read a lot of these kinds of books, and so I tend to be able to pick up on, you know, those basic little clues that they throw out about who's going to connect with who and what dreams are going to come to fruition and like what the conflict might be towards the end. But I still thought that it was great. And I guess to give like a description of this, it's kind of like a found family situation. You have these two sisters who kind of had a troubled past growing up, but their town was wonderful and they both kind of have an attachment to it. But you have one sister that kind of ran off with a guy in her teens and was a little bit of a wild child, and now she's coming back. She's escaping an abusive situation, bringing her daughter with her. She doesn't know where else to go, so she comes back to town to live with her more like reclusive homebody, more like, I don't want to say like demure, more of like a sweet, doesn't question a lot of things type of character, still like an avoidant attachment style. But yeah, you just watch the dynamics of this town, and there's also some magic and a little bit of romance as well. So that was Garden Spells. This next one that I read was a thriller, and I actually listened to this as an audiobook. And I'm not like a super big audiobook fan. I typically will listen to audiobooks if it's nonfiction. Not with fiction as much, but this was actually one that I just needed an audiobook to like fall asleep to, and so this was that. And it's called In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. Now I ended up giving this 3.75 stars, and while I was reading this book, especially like during the first half, I would not have guessed that that's the rating that I was going to be giving it, because this book, oh my goodness, the characters are insufferable, okay? I need you to know that. And the writing is like a little bit juvenile. You're following 5 different characters, very different people, but they all have like something shady going on. You know, it's one of those. And one of them is murdered, and now years later, one of them's been falsely accused, or were they? And you're trying to figure out who did this, like in dissecting all the details of this friend group and the crazy things that they were doing behind the scenes. But despite the fact that they were supposed to be in college, and not only that, they attend this institution called Duquette in Durham, North Carolina, which is clearly supposed to be the Duke University that's in Durham, North Carolina. These characters are attending a very prestigious school, and yet most of them care nothing about their grades, and they just behave more like middle schoolers a lot of the time. And another thing I will say is, you have characters that are like supposed to be sociopaths, and you're like, I get it, they're a bad person, they're a sociopath. Like, the book kind of treats its readers like they're stupid and they can't figure these things out. Like, they don't understand that violence or sexual misconduct or those kind of things are wrong. Like, it's just kind of shoved down your throat a little bit. The reason that I gave it 3.75 stars is that the ending pulled through. The ending came through. It was unexpected, and it was certainly interesting, I'll say that. But I do feel like some of the plot twists, or like the mini plot twists, were a little bit forced. I will say I enjoyed the ending. It was intense, and I feel like everyone got what they deserved to an extent, to a degree. So yeah, I don't have much more to say than that, because it was a little bit boring until about the last quarter. But yeah, that was In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. Okay, book number 7 was another 5-star, and who could guess that this would be another An Ember in the Ashes book by Sabaa Tahir. This one is the final installment, A Sky Beyond the Storm, and it wrapped up perfectly. Like, it was a very long read, I will say that. These are lengthier books for sure, but I feel like I couldn't have ended it better. It was almost too convenient, but I'm not mad about that. Like I'm never gonna complain about fan service if I am a fan, you know? One thing that I will say though is that kind of towards the middle of this book, the world building got a little too complex for me to where I was like, whoa, hold on, like I'm a little bit confused. I had a hard time keeping track of the magic system, I guess you could say, and some of the other fictional aspects of the world, just because it really felt like it kind of was escalated or accelerated from the previous installments as far as like the extent to which magic was impacting the plot. So I got confused about a thing or two, and then I was like, wait, hold on, what is going on? Had to go back. But still, 5 stars. It's my favorite series, guys. At this point, that could change, probably will change, but you have to go read An Ember in the Ashes, and the 4th book is great. Okay, another cozy fantasy read this time was The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. And honestly, guys, I think I just wanted an escape from being an econ major and being stressed with school and work and everything, because I've been reading a lot more fantasy and like cozy books than typical, I would say. But anyway, I gave this book a 3.75. It was amazing. It was so cute. I'll start with my criticism. It's actually, I do feel like it was a little predictable for my liking. It was a little bit slow, very low stakes, but those things are to be expected with the genre. It just felt like it was missing like maybe a little something. But anyway, so this book follows this lovely lady. I am terrible with names, so I can't remember her name right now. But she is a librarian, and she has this talking plant best friend, which is like the most fun. Ugh, I love these cute little talking animals or plant side characters. Like, it's amazing. Anyway, she and her plant best friend assistant work at this giant library on their island until there is a rebellion/revolution. And anyway, they end up being political refugees, I would say. And she can't think of anywhere to go but this tiny rural little island that she lived on as a young girl. Now her parents have died, and she's gonna go reclaim her destiny on this island. And this main character is very reclusive. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. She doesn't want to make friends, but as we know, she is going to meet super fun, super amazing, super sweet people. And yeah, the story just kind of picks up from there, and there's baking, and there's lots of book talk. And yeah, it's just a great nightly read. I would totally recommend it. Okay, number 9 was also a cozy fantasy read, and it's one of my new favorite series. So I'm currently reading the 2nd book, but I'm talking about the 1st book here, and that's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I gave this a 4.25 stars. So this book is also like a little bit of a dark academia situation, and I love that the main character of this book, Emily Wilde, is, I think she's about 30 years old, and in a world of these like 16-year-old girl boss protagonists, it's just refreshing to see a representation of someone who is 30 and they're still thriving and they're vibrant and they have a passion for what they're doing, and they can still be seen as beautiful and youthful and worthwhile as a main character. Anyway, she is a professor at Cambridge who teaches about the Fae, basically teaches about fairies. And so she goes to this mysterious place, I believe it's like, what's it called, like Lysoland or something? I don't know, but it's like this Wingery village, and she's trying to discover more about fairies so that she can, I guess, publish more papers and get more recognition in the world of academia. And she is kind of trailed for some reason by a co-worker of hers that she's not sure how she feels about. She doesn't know what's going on with him, but he kind of just like won't go away, won't get out of her hair, and like not in a creepy way, but he's there to help her, and they arrange some kind of deal so that they both can publish a paper that will progress their careers. And I don't know much about fairies, so I loved learning more about the fairy folklore, like the Fae world. And towards the end, there was a plot point that I definitely did not expect, but I thought that it was so well done. And I also love the format of like a journal, like an academic journal with little footnotes, because that's how the book is set up. I also think that it's set in like the late 1800s, which is nice as well. You kind of can't tell sometimes. There's not as much of a focus on technology as there is like magic. And so it like took me a minute to pick up on when this book was set. It's like set in our world, but there's also portals, I believe, to the fairy world. So it's kind of like a both situation. But anyway, I loved it. I'm currently reading the 2nd one. And so don't spoil it for me. Please don't spoil this series. And I've tried not to spoil it for you either. So that's all for that one. Book number 10 is Belladonna by Adeline Grace, and I had initially heard some really good things about this book, but I didn't quite understand the premise going in. And yeah, I might have wanted to look into that a little more in hindsight. So I ended up giving this a 2.75 stars. Now, it's almost at a 3-star for me because I felt like the plot was well done, the writing was not bad, and I didn't mind the main character or some of her friendships, and she's an orphan. I love a good orphan story. But there was just a central plot point that I just could not handle, could not get with. So we're following this girl. I will put her name here because I simply cannot remember characters' names at this point. And she's basically immune to death. So she kind of figures out that she can't die for any reason. But she also is like accidentally killing people sometimes because of her ties to death. So she's orphaned and she's like 20 years old now, and her current like person that she's living with, I believe was her grandmother, passes away. And so she goes to live with some wealthy relatives at this elusive manor, and there's kind of a mystery going on. Someone has been killed and she has to figure out who did it. That's great. I love a good mystery. I thought she was very badass, and yeah, so I didn't mind, I guess I would say, like the central plot of the story. However, not only is she immune to death, but it turns out that she can see death personified, and that can be good sometimes. The Book Thief actually is my favorite book, and that is narrated by Death. But Death here is
the love interest.
Yeah, that was too much for me. I personally couldn't handle it, especially since it's another one of those situations where this man is like literally immortal, not even human, and girl, what are you doing? Like, there's so many rich, eligible young men in the story that she's surrounded by, and she's like, no, I'm into
death.
Like, I get it. She's like, I'm immune to him. That's cool. No, girl. Like, he's a total red flag. He's a serial killer if you think about it. He's death. Anyway, I am gonna read to you my note on this book. I said, now what the manipulation goes crazy. The main character is unique, I guess, but what in the world was that? So that was my like initial reaction to it. If that sounds interesting to you, go right ahead. I think that you would really enjoy this, but I ain't freaky like that, girl. I couldn't handle it. It was too much for moi, but hey.
To each his own. Her own. Their own. I don't know, it's 2025.
So the last fiction book that I read, and I believe I read this in early May. I've read a few books since whatever the cutoff was for my mid-year reading recap, but this is the last one for now, and I'll discuss the other ones in a future video when I've kind of had time to sit and process them. But anyway, so this next book it's kind of like an offshoot series from the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber, which I read several years ago and I thought was pretty great. As a YA fantasy, it has a beautiful world that it's set in, very whimsical, magical, but a little bit dark as well, and I just felt like it was beautifully written. So of course I had to check out this other series that's set in the same world, and it does follow like a few characters that we see in the other series more closely. So this was Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I ended up giving this book a 3.25 stars. I just think for me it was a little juvenile, which makes sense, it was YA, but I didn't really click with the main character. She's kind, but she is endlessly naive, like just throughout the whole book. She doesn't really learn, she really just thinks the best of people, and it becomes her own demise. I also felt like the writing was a bit melodramatic, and I think that has to do with it being YA as well, but part of it was just kind of like the main character's personality and how she doesn't really think things through all the time. Other than that, I enjoyed the plot. It definitely, like, not a whole lot happened by the end, but I think it's because you're supposed to read the series. There's 3 or 4 books in the series, I think 3. One thing that I will say, and this is my main criticism, this is why this book has only 3.25 stars, is I was not expecting there to be any vampire content, and there ended up being so much of it. Like, in the previous series by this author, there were no vampires that I knew of, but I was like low-key, I think Stephanie Garber has like a thing for blood, the way blood is brought up so often. People like drink it occasionally as like a societal thing. I don't know, it just felt, as someone who has a phobia of blood, it's just something that I couldn't handle. My bad for not looking up trigger warnings, but it is YA, so I kind of wasn't expecting the details of like vampire encounters that are included in this book. And yeah, it was just a lot for me. Like, I was just kind of ugh. But I had the physical book, and then I was also listening to the audiobook of this as well, and I was listening to the audiobook when I got to those certain chapters, and I feel like that just made it more real for me for whatever reason. Like, I couldn't just like skim it or like skip the page. I was like, ugh. Anyway, that's all I have to say for that book. But hey, if you're looking for a wholesome YA fantasy read, or if you just enjoyed the Caraval series and you want to see kind of what happens next, I would definitely recommend. Okay, now we're gonna get into the nonfiction books that I read, and the first nonfiction book that I read this year was The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. Now this one I did not give a rating, and Sherry Frankie goes to my school, or she just graduated actually, but I'll see her around campus sometimes, and she seems like a really nice girl, okay? So for me, I have known about her family for a while, and I was living in the area when this all went down and when this happened. Now, I'm not from Utah, I'm just a college student, but I remember just how striking of an event this was for the people in my area at the time, right? And especially for Sherry, because this is her family, this is her story. I knew some people that went to high school with her as well, but anyway, I don't want to give this a rating because I don't think I should be rating people's trauma and people's like terrible experiences that are still affecting them. Honestly, as an oldest daughter, there was some relatable content in here. I haven't had to face anything as severe as she has, but I just felt like I understood some of it, especially just because of my cultural background and everything. But yeah, I think it's a great read to just make people aware of what can happen with religious extremism in some cases. Yeah, I truly am really sorry for what happened to these children. The portrayal of child abuse is realistic, and you get an insider account of it. And I just feel like the main point that I took away from this, because the Frankies, they're just people. They're people like anyone else. Yes, they had a YouTube channel that blew up, but they're just people, is that you truly never know what someone is going through. You have no clue, like not a clue in the world. But I'm not gonna comment on it further than that. Okay, the next nonfiction book I read was Awe by Dr. Kelder, I believe. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, I'm so sorry. But I actually read this. This was one of the books I read for a class this year, and this is the only one of the books that I read for class that I'm including in this video. But this is a pretty popular one in the like self-help space, I would say. I thought that I would love this book because I have been really trying to work on myself and get into gratitude. I've been gratitude journaling. I truly believe in finding awe in the little moments in life, but I did not like this book. It earned a 2.5 stars from me. So there was some material that was good that I respected. There were some very good points about positivity and what makes us human, but for a non-fiction book that has the word science like on the front cover, I really was hoping to see like actual data, actual studies and evidence, and there was a lot of, I would just say, speculative accounts. This author, I guess, had, you know, a lot of the book is him talking about conversations he's had with people or his own personal feelings and experiences. And while that can be really interesting to read about, I just didn't feel like that was what was advertised. And it just got a little to like too new age, spiritualist, kind of hippie vibes for me, especially as like an introvert. Like there were a lot of generalizations about what brings people joy and what makes life worth living. And there's this whole like really long drawn out chapter about like humans moving their bodies and dancing wildly in a crowd, like at a rave or in a mosh pit, kind of like we did back in tribal days when people had tribal dances, and how like
nowadays we're oppressed by this corporate society, right? Like Big Brother, and you know, if only we could get back to the days where we just dance naked around the fire. Like that's what would bring us the most joy and fulfillment.
And I just feel like that's not realistic for everyone. I hate dancing, so that's probably why I took issue with that. But it was just like such a long chapter, and he kept repeating the phrase
Moving our bodies the way they're meant to move.
and I was like, this body is not meant to dance naked around a fire, so speak for yourself, Docker. Sorry, bro. And so I wrote this essay like ripping it to shreds. And then this other girl in my class who I was working on a project with, she mentioned that she had read the book, and she immediately starts raving about how much she loved it. So you might like it. But I was like, oh. I just kept my mouth shut. I wasn't gonna ruin it for her. Okay, besties, we're on to another one of my favorite reads from this first half of the year, and that is Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. Now, I will say that I have for a very long time followed Ali's journey on YouTube, and so that probably did influence my decision to purchase and read the book. But I thought this book was great. It had a lot more new insight than I was expecting, and it just felt genuine. It felt from the heart, and I could really tell that it wasn't just like a publishing deal situation. Like he had really taken the time to put his best foot forward in the self-help world and try to contribute the legacy that he would have to leave on the world, if that makes sense. And that might sound dramatic, but there was a lot of scientific evidence in this book, something that the book Awe was lacking, and I appreciated that. There was actual data, there were actual scientific insights. It was also organized very clearly, and it had summaries after every chapter. And as someone who isn't a super huge fan of just reading like dense nonfiction books, this one was light and it was very clear and concise, which I appreciated. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you have been struggling, as we all do, with time management, or just getting down on yourself for not being like an engineer and an Olympian at the age of 21. All right, my loves, we have arrived at the last read that we're going to be discussing today in this little recap, and that is a book that my dad for the longest time has been trying to convince me to read, because if you couldn't tell, your girl is socially awkward, a little bit introverted. People are not my strong suit, okay? And so he's like, you have to read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now, this book I believe is from the 50s, so the information is timeless, but I would say that the scenarios that were used as examples for these principles, some of them were outdated. They were really not timeless. There were a lot of scenarios that you just wouldn't find yourself in modern times, and that's okay. I still think that this was a great contribution from Dale Carnegie. Like, if I was Dale Carnegie and I was on my deathbed, I would be very proud. Like, he has multiple books, but even if this was the only thing that I put out into the world, I would be proud of it. I think there are definitely a lot of people who could benefit from this book, but I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's great advice, but it's very basic advice. I felt it's very intuitive. Like, compliment people and they will like you. Be grateful for people's generosity and they will like you. Don't complain and people will like you. You see what I'm saying? Like, it contained principles that most friendly individuals, whether introverted, extroverted, super charismatic, or super reclusive, know and understand and likely practice oftentimes. So I just was hoping for new information, but that's all right. It's not a bad book by any means. Okay, y'all, I am tired. My throat hurts and I'm out of water. So that's gonna have to be that for today. But if you liked this video, comment down below what you'd like to see in the future. If you read any of these books and you disagree, I would love to fight it out in the comments, or have you guys fight it out in the comments. We will get it settled, okay? Court adjourned, or whatever the heck they say. And of course, if you'd like to see more, consider sticking around as well. That's all for today, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!